So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chantel, who's going to lead us through the world of natural pest management.
Thank you, Kristen. So I'm super excited to jump into day 4 of natural pest management. Laura, let's swing over to the next slide. We're going to be really talking about one of the integral points of natural pest management, which has a really big name, but it's really important, right? So integrated pest management, also dubbed as IPM. So IPM is an ecosystem-based strategy that focuses on long-term prevention of pests and their damage through a combination of techniques. So I really want to highlight the combination of techniques. I know some of us may have done one thing, we might have tried one spray and thought, oh, it didn't work, so IPM doesn't work. So we really have to do things in conjunction with one another. Another disclaimer is that there's no foolproof way. There's no 100% guarantee of getting rid of all pests. Not even the harshest chemicals can do that for you. So with IPM, we're really talking about healthy management, good balance, just to keep things in check in the garden. So as you can see here, we're going to be talking about indoor and outdoor pests. We're going to be talking about aphids, white flies, fungus gnats, beetles, a whole host of natural sprays that you guys can use, and then mosquitoes. I know a lot of us said our favorite bug was mosquitoes, so we're going to be talking about that later. Laura, let's go to the next slide. There we're going to see some of the most common garden pests. So these are the pests that you guys are probably already seeing in your garden. Aphids, sucking the life out of your plants, just really giving you a hard time. White flies, if you have an infestation of white flies, they're biting you, just crazy, flying all over the place through your collard greens. And then the cucumber beetles, they're not subtle at all. You kind of know exactly when they get up in there. And the next slide, you're going to be able to see the physical manifestation of these pests, right? So you see the aphids all at the underside of this leaf, like, I think that might be a pepper plant, and it just looks gross. I mean, who wants to harvest peppers from there? I don't know, right? And then we have the white flies on this collard green, just so sad. And then the cucumber beetle, not even trying to be inconspicuous, just kind of biting through everything, ruining everything. And then even if you have this magical garden, right, where you get no pests, we still have to talk about plant diseases. So in the next slide, these are the most common plant diseases, right? So powdery mildew, it can just ravage an entire plant of, say you got the little baby snap peas and they're so delicious in the summer, and then you come back the next day, just powdery mildew everywhere, right? But the good thing about powdery mildew is you can catch it early, and if you do, you could just cut off the leaves and throw it away. Please do not compost the leaves with powdery mildew on them. And if you do, don't say that I told you to do it, because I didn't. Throw them in the garbage, and then later on you could probably come back with a neem oil spray and really tidy it up. So we're going to talk more about the neem oil spray later. Next one, bacterial wilt. Like I said, the cucumber beetles, right? Not subtle, really hitting you hard, right? We're going to talk about sticky traps that are going to be effective for the cucumber beetles. And then the last but not least, blossom end rot, because I know you guys were going to ask me about the tomatoes. Sometimes it's not your fault, right? Because it's the first season, the plants are stressed out, like we're stressed out, and they don't want to grow regular. They want to be extra. We have to allow for that, right? But sometimes it is your fault, right? Because we're doing uneven watering practices. Maybe we have corporate groups coming in. Maybe we have the schools coming in. Maybe we have volunteers coming in, and they don't know how to water. And we're just letting them water overhead all willy-nilly. And then we're wondering why we are getting blossom end rot, right? So just understanding, sometimes not your fault, sometimes might be your fault, right? And then the next slide, we're going to talk about the babies, right? My loves, the ones who do the most work for us, and all they want us to do is what we already are doing, which is grow some stuff to get them in there, right? So First, the ladybugs, right? Everybody loves ladybugs. They're easily identifying. They look really great in the space. And they're carnivores. So they're going to eat all of those soft body insects. They're going to get to the aphids that we don't like. They're going to get to the beetles and all of that stuff, right? So that's really awesome. But I do have to talk about something that a lot of us do, which is releasing, right? I know a lot of you are like, yes, I want ladybugs, so I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna buy some and I'm gonna just throw them in the garden and everything's gonna be perfect, but we're actually getting in the way of the natural ecosystem. We're kind of displacing our native ladybugs. So that's just something to think about if you decide, hey, I do wanna buy ladybugs. I'm not telling you to buy them, that's up to you, but I'm just letting you know that when you do, be mindful of what it is that you're doing. Then we have our green lacewings. I mean, these guys don't look like superheroes, but they really are. I mean, when they're larvae, when they're babies, they're eating about 200 pests a week, guys. So if you have some green lacewings in your garden, they're really doing a lot of the work for you. And then last but certainly not least is our soldier beetles, right? And I know a lot of us are guilty of killing soldier beetles, thinking that they're pests, when in all actuality, they're eating a lot of pests. They're also pollinators. They're doing a lot of the work. So we have to be able to identify what are the bugs that are helping us and what are the bugs that are harming us. And I think a more general disclaimer is understanding that once these beneficial bugs do the work, eat all the pests, eat all the aphids, eat all the whiteflies, they're gonna leave. Okay, so don't, be sad about it, but it happens, right? Once the food is gone, they're going to go too. And so now we're going to get into some rule of thumb prevention methods, right? Because this is going to allow us to work with our beneficial bugs. So part of that is making sure that the garden is neat, making sure that we're weeding regularly, right? So like I said before, when we talked about the plant diseases, right? If the garden is neat and you're weeding regularly, you're going to be able to catch these plant diseases when they're in their early stages. We're going to be able to catch some of these pests when they're just eggs on the underside of the leaves and get rid of them fast before we have a full infestation, right? Also, no water pools. I know a lot of us talked about mosquitoes, right? Mosquitoes can breed in a bottle cap full of water. You know how small that is? Imagine the Poland Spring little bottle cap full of water. That's a mosquito. That's some babies in there, right? So making sure we don't have any standing pools of water. Keeping it neat, weeding regularly is going to make sure, right? And then also making sure that we're not watering unevenly. Remember from the blossom end rot, mosquitoes, right? You see how it's all connecting, guys? I feel like you guys are getting me. The next one is talking about the pest spray, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that later on, is making a natural pest spray. I got a bunch of recipes, I got a bunch of disclaimers. We'll get into that. Maintaining soil health. I mean, we have to understand that whatever we're putting in is what we're going to get out, right? So if the soil is happy, the plants will be happy, the pollinators will be happy. I mean, I feel like you guys are getting where I'm going with this, right? So just finding a real balance, okay? And then last but certainly not least, keeping your garden away from trash. So for the gardens that are already established, there's not much that we can do, right? Other than pick up a lot of the litter that is happening in the garden, as well as making sure that if we are next to curbside, that we're letting other people know, the other community members know, hey, listen, we have a garden here. We're trying to keep rats away. We're trying to make sure our garden looks nice. But if we're in the planning stages of like building out our garden, making sure we're not next to dumpsters. We're not next to where they have trash drop-off sites, right? We're not in an area where there is a large amount of trash, just so we can mitigate that, right? And then we're gonna move on to the next slide. Here we're talking about prevention techniques. Now, guys, floating row cover. If there's anything that you're gonna get from here, is that floating row cover is the best. It is cheap. It is foolproof. All you need is some stakes or some rocks, anything that's basically heavier than the floating roll cover, which is about everything, right? So it's a physical deterrent for birds and bugs. It allows in light and moisture. It's lightweight in the summer, heavyweight for season extension. And we all know we need that season extension, guys, because climate change is real, right? The next slide, right? We're talking about sticky traps. I live by sticky traps. It's so easy, okay? It couldn't be easier unless it stuck itself on the pole and put itself in the ground. I mean, you just really just put it on there and it's gonna collect all of those aphids. It's gonna collect the whiteflies. It's gonna collect the cucumber beetles, right? And so we wanna make sure that we're using things in conjunction with one another. So if we have the floating roll cover and the sticky traps, we're getting rid of at least half of the pests that we have. In the next slide, we're going to talk about something that's really important, which is crop rotation. So crop rotation is really used to prevent those diseases. We saw the diseases in the beginning of the presentation. It's not pretty, right? But if we understand the plant family, then we're able to understand how the crop rotation works. So it's basically, if you planted beans in bed 5 last season, don't plant peas. It's in the same family. I know they don't taste the same and they don't look the same, but it's in the exact same family. Next slide, right? Because I think you guys get this. I think you guys get where I'm going, right? And then next we're going to talk about deterrent plants. So a lot of us live and die by marigold. So marigold is really great. It attacks those worms that are really getting at our plants, but the way you have to use it is a little bit different than we've been using it traditionally. So you plant it in the spring, remove it in the summer, and then plant whatever you want to plant in the fall in that same area, that same patch of soil. Now I know some of you are like, that's not how I use it. I understand, but this is the way you're supposed to use it. So you could do it your way, you could do it my way. Either way, marigold's great for pollinators and also great for the worms. And then borage, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Like I told you guys, all we have to do to get the beneficial bugs is do what we're already doing, which is plant. So when we're planting things that are going to attract the beneficial bugs and we can use them as companion plants, it's only going to help us. We also could do a really cool thing called trap planting, which is basically, you know that the bugs are going to go to it, so you intentionally plant it and then you pull it out and then you plant what you want to plant. So it's up to you guys. Now we're going to go quickly through some sprays. So neem oil spray. I love neem oil, okay? So it's outdoor. Please don't use it indoor. Make sure that we're hitting the eggs and the pests directly. Make sure that we're going for the underside of the leaves. There's a whole list of pests that it gets to. But I think the most important thing for neem oil is making sure that we're spraying it very early in the morning or late in the afternoon, and we're not doing it when it's high noon or when the sun is at its peak. It's just like if you and I went outside in 100-degree weather smothered in baby oil. We're gonna burn, it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's the same thing for the plants. So just understanding that, right? The next one, we're gonna talk about BT. Now, I'm not excited about BT. It's very harsh. I would say heavy dilution. It is organic because it's a naturally occurring bacterium in the soil, but it's mostly used for large scale commercial farms. So I would say last resort. You've done everything, every IPM technique, and BT is like the save all. I need this in order to get my veggies where they need to be. And let's say you want to go organic. You're like, Chantel, I need something organic. I'm gonna show you a pest spray that you can use, right? So in the next slide, Laura, let's go to the next slide. We have a outdoor natural pest spray, right? So it has the directions, it has the whole recipe, so I don't really need to get into that, right? But what I will say is make sure that you're wearing gloves. If you're clumsy, put some eye goggles on. Probably don't do this with kids because it has the cayenne pepper, the onion, the garlic. I mean, this can go bad real fast if we're not careful, right? And that's why it's an outdoor spray. Don't use it indoors and say, I told you to do it, because I didn't. In the next slide, we have indoor spray, right? So outdoor spray, indoor spray. You guys get me, right? So we have a soap spray for aphids and the spider mites, and then we have a hydrogen peroxide for the fungus gnats. I mean, I'm feeling this. I'm like, if you're using the spray for the fungus gnats and the sticky traps, you're probably not going to have any more fungus gnats. If you're using the soap spray for the aphids and you're using sticky traps, probably not going to have aphids. So doing things in combination with each other. And then last, but certainly not least, mosquitoes. We're coming up to the end, guys. Mosquitoes, right? So like we said before, no stagnant water, right? Remember the bottle cap thing that I had in you guys' heads? That's how small that's how small the water has to be for mosquitoes to breed, right? And so the next thing is the mosquito dunks. Now, this is kind of controversial, right? Some people feel like they don't work. Other people live and die by mosquito dunks. Honestly, it's up to you. If it works for your space, yes. If it doesn't, then no. You know, I think the most important thing to understand is that by having mosquito dunks, we are essentially attracting mosquitoes so that way they can die, right? It also gets rid of a lot of the biting flies. And then on top of that, it doesn't hurt any of the other pollinators. So we don't have to worry about, oh, if we have mosquito dunks, it's going to hurt the butterflies, it's going to hurt the bees. And then also trimming back overgrowth. So if you guys don't know what mosquito dunks are, you could just do some real easy research. And then also it's really inexpensive. Trimming back overgrowth, we talked about this earlier, keeping it neat and making sure that there's no area for a lot of the pests to hide in. And then also avoiding gardening at night. I mean, guys, in the summertime, I always get this mosquito bite right here in the middle of my forehead. They love my forehead, guys. So it's like we have to make sure that when we're in the garden, we're there at the appropriate time, or these things will happen. Another thing that I do want to talk to you guys about is the mosquito repellent plants, right? So a lot of us, we have centinela, we have lemongrass, we have lavender, and we're like, why are the mosquitoes still coming? And the mosquitoes are still coming because you have to activate the oils in the plant. So you have to literally rub the leaves of the plant to activate the oils. So that way it becomes mosquito repellent. That's what we have to do. So we have large groups out there. They're going to be rubbing some leaves so that way we can get rid of some of these mosquitoes. I'm just letting you know because I'm just letting you know, guys. And then last but certainly not least is a disclaimer, okay? We have to be eco-friendly. We have to understand that natural pest control is really important, right? We don't want to poison we don't want to poison all bugs. We don't want to poison all plants. But pesticides and herbicides, they don't really choose. They just go after whatever bug is in the vicinity. And as we've seen before, we need our beneficial bugs, just like we need our pests. We might not like aphids, but without aphids, what would ladybugs eat? What would the green lacewings eat? What would the soldier beetles eat, right? So it's just really becoming one with nature and understanding the entire ecosystem. So that way our plants could be happy, we can be happy, the pollinators could be happy, and sometimes even the pests will be a little happy, right? And just IPM is all about patience. It's all about experimentation. It's all about making sure that we're taking time, we're doing things the right way, we're doing things in conjunction with one another because it's really important. And then that's all for me.
All right. Thank you, Chantel. We have so many questions in the chat. in the Q&A. So first, and I've been reading all of them. So again, if we don't get to your question right now, we are going to answer all of them tonight. You'll have them in writing. We're going to email it to you and it'll be on that distance learning page. Yeah. One thing that I just want to address super fast, there are a lot of questions in the Q&A about rats. We could talk about rats all day. We know that they are a massive pest and that they're plaguing a lot of your gardens. Later on in the summer, we are going to do a workshop just about rats. So there's some resources that we're going to send you, but we're not going to talk about them today. We're going to stick to bugs. So Chantel, your first question, a lot of people are asking why they can't use neem oil inside.
It's not supposed to be used for inside use. So we have to follow the directions, right? So it's mostly used for the outdoors, and there are a host of other indoor sprays. So I don't think it's necessarily so important to use neem oil inside.
Okay. We also have a question about if you are going to use floating row cover, does using floating row cover create the right environment for pests to spread if they're already inside when you put the row cover down?
That's important. I think that yes and no, because like we said before, of making sure that we're keeping track of all of the plants. So just because you have floating row cover doesn't mean that you don't need to go in and inspect the plants. So if you're being hyper vigilant, understanding, hey, I had aphids last year, let me make sure that even though I have floating row cover that I'm checking them, then it shouldn't be an issue. But if you're just putting the floating row cover and you're not really checking on them, then the infestation is bound to happen anyway.
Somebody is asking, they had some indoor plants that they brought outside last summer, and then when they brought them inside in the fall, some of them had scale insects on them. So how would you get rid of insects that are traveling from outside to inside on a plant?
Oh, I mean, I would definitely try just a regular soapy water solution. It doesn't hurt to actually know what insect it is, because that's going to determine what technique is going to work for them or what natural pest spray. So just really doing your research, you can just take a picture of it and Google it and figure out what pest is this. And once you know that, then you'll be able to use the other techniques to get rid of it.
You can, for anybody who's like struggling to figure out what pest is on their plant, you can also just email us the picture and then we can help you figure out what it is. We really like investigating mysterious bugs, so feel free to send that to us. Someone wants to know, what can you do with the soil when you remove an aphid infested plant? Can you save an aphid infested leafy green?
Can you save it? I mean, if you already tried using neem oil or you tried using the other pest sprays and you tried sticky traps and it didn't really work, probably not. I mean, if you use a combination of techniques and it's not working, then sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get an infestation and you just have to bite the bullet.
I'll also add into that, I know a lot of like smaller organic community farms and gardens, they actually just don't have a big problem with the aphids. They just kind of let them live in harmony and they just wash them off when they're ready to harvest. So if you're okay with them and they're not actually destroying your plant, then maybe they're not as much of a problem, just their existence there. You can just wash them off when you're ready.
That's true.
Somebody is asking why can't we compost the infected leaves with powdery mildew?
Kate, I'm gonna swing this over to you.
To try to unmute, great. Just in general, any diseased plants, you don't want to introduce it to your compost pile. Compost piles have to reach a high temperature of about 165 degrees over an extended period of time in order to kill any of those diseases on the plants. And unless you have a really highly managed compost system where you're taking the temperature and you're sure the diseased plants are in that hot spot in the compost pile, you run the risk of the disease just breeding in the compost pile and then you redistributing the disease to your plants next year or in the same season when you put compost in your garden.
Yeah.
Okay.
What she said.
Yeah. we have a question about bigger pests like birds and squirrels. And they are eating some of the smaller sprouts and the seedlings that are growing in the garden. She put plastic bags over the plants and it worked until the weather became too hot and made it cooked her plants. So how do you keep big pests away but also keep like breathable room for them?
I think that a lot of people talk about the cayenne pepper spray, which is basically what we had there. and squirrels really don't like the smell of it. So you could try it out on like the sides of one bed and see if that works for you. But I mean, like we said, balance in nature, a lot of times we just have to deal with the fact that there are hungry squirrels and hungry birds and we're in the city. It's not much we could really do about it, but you could try the cayenne pepper thing.
You could try netting too, like making almost like a teepee covering or like a triangle top over your outside space. Netting will help. And also, we used to take old pairs of pantyhose and like stretch them over the tops of like bucket containers that we were growing in, because you'll still let a lot of light and air and even water like through, but it's a nice little barrier for birds and squirrels. So yeah.
I'm going to jump in as well on that one and just say old CDs, if you want to get a couple of old CDs and make a little mobile out of them and hang them in places in your garden, they can deter squirrels and birds. They're somewhat frightened of the reflection off of those things. So you can upcycle some of those old CDs that we have no idea what to do with these days anyway.
We have a couple of questions about ants. Ants in the garden, ants inside. It sounds like they're using some kind of spray and it's not working. So how do we keep ants away indoor and outdoor?
Ants. I don't really have a solution for ants. Do any of you guys want to take that one?
I would say for outdoor gardens, they're not usually disturbing the plants all that much. They don't go super deep, and you can always just kind of like collapse their colonies if they are disturbing a particular plant. But outdoors, there's no way to really get rid of the ants, and most of the time they're not doing too much damage. Indoors, it's kind of, I don't think they're being attracted to the plants. It's more the food. So just making sure that your food is all packed away in plastic containers, or you have ant traps or something like that.
Diatomaceous earth can also be like good for indoor ants. I feel your pain. I had them one spring. No matter what, they just kept marching in through my window. So diatomaceous earth on the windowsill was what worked for us finally. We are getting questions about little tiny black bugs on strawberries.
Little tiny black bugs on strawberries. and what to do about them?
Yeah.
Well,
that might be a good one for a picture.
Yeah, maybe a picture would help. There are a lot of bugs that are tiny and black. Yeah, maybe a picture to our email that's within the presentation, and we could give you an accurate solution.
Yeah. We have questions about caterpillars.
Okay. So how to get rid of caterpillars?
How to get rid of caterpillars.
That's very controversial, isn't it? Just because caterpillars tend to morph into butterflies, which are real pollinators, and we need them. What I would say is, if you can, we talked about this, I think in day two, where we talked about milkweed, which caterpillars really love, and you can kind of plant it somewhere out of the way and they'll just kind of attack the milkweed and then morph into these beautiful butterflies. So you could still have caterpillars, but they won't necessarily be hurting the rest of your plants. I mean, if you want to run through and kind of pick them out, you could. I wouldn't suggest to kill a caterpillar. I would be sad about that. So
we have a question about somebody who's using Raid, like on the outside of their house, and they're worried about rain washing it into the garden.
So obviously Raid is not organic. It has a host of chemicals in it. Are they using Raid to get rid of ants or roaches or flies or something? They didn't say.
Just Raid. That's all we know.
Okay. Well, is it possible to get runoff? Yes. But if you have the landscape fabric and you have a bed that also has another layer of landscape fabric, I wouldn't be too worried about it unless you're spraying like a mountain of Raid every day. But you probably should try out one of the natural pest sprays that we have and see if that works better. Because then you could spray it, it'll get rid of the pest that you want, and you won't necessarily be worried about runoff in the garden.
Yeah. We have a question about baby slugs. How do you get rid of slugs?
Oh, slugs are really cool because don't they are attracted to yeast, right?
Yeah.
So you could just have a nice little shallow dish and pour some beer in it, make a slug trap. They kind of crawl in there, get drunk, and then you pick them out in the morning and just put them out your garden. If you have a compost bin, you don't have to kill them. You could just put them in your compost. They'll kind of do some good work there.
As gross as it is, it's also really helpful to just pick the slugs off your plant if you could stomach the idea of it. And we have a question about leaf miners. How do we get rid of leaf miners?
Oh, leaf miners, you could just use neem oil. You could use neem oil too.
Okay. We have time probably for 2 more questions.
Okay.
We have questions about species of plants that can be grown for the care of bees. I know Laura loves bees, so she could always tag in if needs to be.
Laura, take this one away.
Yeah, happy to. We already added to our follow-up post information about what flowers you can plant for bees and other beneficial insects and pollinators. Some great ones to get started are like lavender, or you could have basil and let a lot of it go to flower because they love that. There's a lot of native plants, so you could do butterfly bush, bee balm, borage. They also love, as Chantel mentioned earlier. So any like wildflower mix or native plants, that's one place to start. And then, yeah, letting your basil go to flower, they love that too.
Yeah. Also, if you're doing cover crop and you really want to attract bees, buckwheat is really good. So you might come back in the spring with a whole host of bees just buzzing around your buckwheat. So.
Okay, we have one last question. Will using gravel on top of the soil to deter pests cause other issues, such as issues with water retention?
It's a possibility. I mean, when you say gravel, I'm thinking about really fine rocks. So I wouldn't think so, but maybe making sure that wherever you're sourcing it from it doesn't have any like harsh chemicals or something like that, which is what happens with some rocks. So just making sure that whatever you're putting on top, you wouldn't mind going to the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did that on my indoor plants that had fungus
too.
gnats. I put gravel on the top, and what I noticed is it actually makes my plants dry out slower. So it helps retain the water and moisture that's in there because it doesn't evaporate as quickly.
Nice. You know what? And we did have some questions about fungus gnats. So for those of you who are curious about indoor fungus gnat problems, what Laura just said about putting the gravel on top can be great. And we also, before you do that though, we recommend like taking the first 2 inches of soil out of your plant pots and putting fresh soil so that you'll take all those little baby eggs out of there, and then you put the gravel, and then you can spray with like a diluted soap mixture, and that is awesome to get rid of fungus. That worked for mine. I know sometimes it takes a little more trial and error. And we've got some people in the chat saying that hydrogen peroxide works as well. All right, so we are out of time. How fast these days have been going. We have one more for you tomorrow. You can stump our teaching garden staff with all of your Q&A. So we're going to do a quick tour of the teaching garden tomorrow so everyone can see what's blooming over there right now, and then it will be all Q&A. Sign up for that one if you haven't already on Eventbrite. This recording, as soon as we're done answering the nearly 100 questions that we got for this workshop today, we are going to post with the video onto the distance learning page, and we are going to email it to you. And the last thing that I will say is that if you have been enjoying our presentations all week and you want to consider making a donation, we all are always appreciated, and you can do that at grownyc.org. Also in the email you're going to get, we're starting to think about our summer series. So we're going to be back after this week, come like the end of June. We're going to be you can tune in with us on Wednesdays, and we'll have all kinds of topics. So in the survey today or whenever, if you want to let us know which topics would be of interest to you, please do, because we want these to be great resources for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Chantel, for leading an awesome workshop.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.